Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today's video, we are going to talk about the drive dial on the Fujifilm X-T4. Now, if this is your first time at the channel and the first time checking out some of my introduction videos, you may want to check back on my past video. I will link it up above. It's on the overview of all of the buttons on the X-T4. So we're doing a bit more of a deep dive into some of the functions available on the buttons for the X-T4. So today's video, we are going to touch on all of the different drive settings that are available of the Fuji X-T4, as well as when you do select that certain drive function, what it does, but also the different options that you can choose on the menu system when you apply these drive settings for the movable dial. So thanks for tuning in. If you liked the video, by all means, give it a thumbs up. And also please consider subscribing. We're sharing regular X-T4 videos on this channel, so it'd be great to have you along. Now this video will probably get a little bit long, so what I will do is if you found this video searching for a certain drive function on the X-T4, down in the description I will leave a timestamp for the different settings of the different drive settings that are available, so you can skip ahead to a certain section of the video if you want to. So thanks for joining, and let's get into it. Okay, the drive dial is on the left-hand side of your Fuji X-T4, and it's not the top part dial here, but there's a little switch that can pull along, and this changes all of the different drive settings. So by default and kind of the standard drive setting that you'll most likely be in all the time is S, which is basically like single frame standard shooting menu on that. So that is the S diagram there, and what this does is when you press down the shutter, each time you press down the shutter, it will fire one picture. Now the next one we'll talk over, if you hit the button a little bit to the right, that is the HDR function. And what this will do is each time your shutter is pressed, the camera will automatically take 3 shots, all of varying exposure and each time, and it combines them into a single image. So the resulting photograph will preserve all the details of the highlights and the shadows. If you are using this function, after you do rotate it to the HDR, there is some further settings that you can actually choose. If you hit the menu setting and go down to the drive setting, and you can select HDR, and by default, this will adjust the settings for the dynamic range of the HDR. Now, one thing to keep in mind if you are taking photographs with HDR is you will want to make sure that the camera is steady. So ideally you would want to be using a tripod because it is taking 3 shots. So the 3 different photographs, if things are moving in your image, it's going to result in a blurry photo. So ideally you want to use a tripod if you're shooting HDR and taking your photo that way. Another thing to keep in mind is if you are using a flash, the flash will not fire. Now the next drive setting you can select is to the left of the single shot, and it's CL, and that stands for continuous burst, but it's continuous low. So by selecting this, what this will actually do is each time you press down your shutter button, it will fire an image each time continually, but at a slower function than the next one, which is going to be high speed. So there's 2 settings for continuous shooting. There's a continuous shooting low and a continuous shooting high. Now there is a different burst rate for each of them. You'll see here if it's on low, it makes a L right there, and on high, it'll say H. Now to actually change that, you go again to the drive setting, so it's to the camera, over to drive setting, and then you select over here, and you can actually choose the burst speed of either. So let's go to the low first because we are on low, hit OK, and it's either 8 frames, 7 frames, 5 frames, or 3 frames per second. Now if we go back and we select to high, we can adjust the high burst rate, and by default, the maximum is 15 frames per second. Now this can be adjusted if you adjust the either to, like, we'll get into another video on this, but if you either select like an electronic front shutter for fully electronic, you can actually increase the frame rate quite substantially. But by default, with the regular shutter, it's 15 frames per second on the high speed. Now, just a few things to remember if you are on high speed or the continuous shooting high speed or low is the file numbering system on your camera. If you take enough photos to reach 9,999 before you've basically finished shooting for the day, the new pictures will actually be put into a new folder on your camera. So you have a couple of folders in your memory card of the images. The maximum they can hold is 9,999. Shooting will also stop. Obviously, makes sense if your memory card is full. So you want to make sure that if you're shooting on a high-speed setting and your memory card is almost full, what will kind of happen is your camera will shoot into its internal kind of buffer memory, and then it will transfer it over to your memory card. So sometimes what will happen if your card is almost full, those last remaining shots might not be transferred over to your memory card. So this is something to be aware of. And the frame rates actually too might kind of slow down a little bit if you're taking a lot of shots, and that will kind of depend also too on how fast your memory card is. So if you are taking high-speed shots, you will want to make sure that you have a fast memory card. And then the next one here, just to the left again, is it says BKT, which is for bracketing. And there's a few options here. Now this will choose what one you have selected again in the drive setting. So we go to the drive settings and we have your bracket settings here, and we will have a few choices to choose. There's AE bracket. So this will actually, what this does is it chooses the number of shots, how many are taken. Right now, this should be, usually it's set up and we can do, let's just choose here. So we go back and we can select, there's a few things. So there's a ISO bracket and it will take multiple images, but each time the shutter is pushed, the camera will take basically 3 pictures, and one will be, ISO will be on the current setting is at, then the next one will be at a lower sensitivity, and the next one will be at a higher one. This is kind of used if you're wanting to combine images afterwards in your image editing program. The next option down, you can do a film simulation bracket. Now, if you're wondering what the film simulations are, we'd have another video on this channel talking about the different Fuji film simulations that are available. And what this will actually do is you can actually choose which 3 film simulation brackets you want to do, and it will actually create a JPEG image with 3 film simulations instead of just the one that you have selected as your current setting. This is something that if you're shooting with just a JPEG, that you might want to choose, but if you are shooting with RAW, you can always add the film simulations afterwards in your editing program. But it does make it a bit easier for sharing images if you're looking for different, just to do less editing. The next one down is a white balance bracket. So this again, 3 photos, but the bracketing amount will be basically +1, +2, or +3. So each time the shutter is released, the camera will take 1 shot and process this to create basically 3 copies, one with the current white balance setting, one with it increased, the selected amount, and another with it decreased by the selected amount. So if you're taking 3 photos, right now it is set for +1. So it will take a photo with the current balance setting, then it will take a photo with the +1 of white balance, and then one with negative white balance. And the next one here is focus bracketing. And what this will do, it will again take a series of photos, but it will actually vary the focus from each shot. So what this will actually do, you can have it set up to be auto. So that way what you can do is if you're combining photos again in post-production, you can have a image that is fully focused from basically the front of your frame all the way to the very back. So something, again, to possibly look at doing. I don't do a lot of bracket shooting just with the type of style that I do. Now, the next one, again, to the left is advanced. So it says ADV on your dial. And to get into that, to change your settings, again, you're going to the drive settings. And this is our advanced filter settings. And this is kind of a little bit, I mean, maybe a little bit kind of gimmicky, but if you're looking to do some kind of, just some little options in your camera, these are the advanced, the filters. So there's a few options that you can actually choose. First one here, toy camera. And I'll do video with some of these to show kind of the photos that come out of these. So make sure you are, if you're not subscribed, subscribe, and then turn on the notification bell, and you'll get notified when I do post new videos, so you'll be able to see these. Toy camera, what this does is it kind of gives a retro toy camera effect. The next one is a miniature. So the tops and bottoms of the picture are blurred. So it kind of makes like a diorama or almost like a model effect. You've probably seen maybe some of these on Instagram before. And the next one there is a pop of color. So this one will create high contrast images with saturated colors. The next one is high key, and it creates bright and low contrast images. And the next one is low key, creates uniformly dark tones with a few areas emphasize highlights. Next one is dynamic tone. Creates a fantasy effect by dynamically modulating tone reproduction. So that would be interesting. Have to kind of see how that fantasy effect kind of does work. And soft focus, pretty self-explanatory, gives a look that is evenly soft throughout the whole image. And these next ones are kind of interesting as well. So these are partial color advanced filters. And what this will do is basically the partial color will be red and everything else will be black and white in the photo. So if you're taking a picture, and there's different options. So orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. So those are the advanced filters that are available in the X-T4. Okay, now last but not least, to the far left-hand side is the last one, is the Panorama button. It's a little square box, and will pop up on the screen is the Panorama function. So what you're wanting to do is, has an arrow here. It will basically, you'll compose your image, hold down the shutter button, and then move the camera. It will direct you how fast to do it. You just follow the arrow along to the very end, and it will let you know when you can release the shutter at the end. So there is a couple of options though with Panorama settings. You don't go into the menu system for these, but you can actually do them with the D-pad right here. So one is the direction. So if we hit right here, it will actually let you choose the direction of your panorama. So it can be from left to right, and you can choose from right to left. So you can choose the different ways that you want to do it. And then also too, you can actually choose the angle. So you can do panorama, you can do medium or large on there as well. So a couple of options for your panorama. What you can actually do to do different types of images, you can actually do a panorama in portrait style, and that's where you would switch it on the direction side. So if you turn it down and then rotate your camera, you'll have a stitch photo, just the other panorama direction. And those will automatically stitch them together and put it into and save it into your camera. Now there is some tips that Fuji recommends for this, and for best results is you want to use a more wide angle lens. So ideally a lens with a focal length of 35 millimeters or less. And also too, is you want to try and keep your camera as steady as possible when you're doing your panorama shots. So you can kind of, keep it as close to your body as possible, and keep it as parallel basically to the horizon as possible. So there's less, the end image will be a lot sharper if it's done steady. You can also use a tripod with it too. So if you have a tripod with a tripod head that can rotate, you can make a really great panorama with the tripod. Okay, there we go. There is the exhausted list of all of the drive settings of the Fuji X-T4. So thanks so much for joining me. Thanks for sticking it out. If you've stayed this long and you've watched the whole video, please consider subscribing if you found it useful. If you're not subscribed already, give the video a thumbs up. And until my next video, you can check out my last video right now. Thanks so much and have a great day, everybody.